Okay, guys, let's get into this. I will tell y'all, when they sent me a message about speaking, I was kind of like, me? You want me to talk about what I do? And I never really thought about what I do because it wasn't something planned in my life. I know when you had asked how I got started into this, and I grew up like 2 hours from here. Small, rural Alabama. Did not have any idea that this was even a job. Like, you can actually work in television and actually be in clothes and costumes. And so I went to college at Alabama and Birmingham. I got a degree in communications, which I will say has helped me because learning how to talk to people is still a really good skill to have. And didn't know what I wanted to do with it, though. And I got out and I got a sales job, and I was like, yep, I'm going to be a sales rep for the rest of my life. And 25, hit the road, moved down to the panhandle of Florida. Was like, I'm going to live at the beach and be a sales rep. And I decided, I had a best friend that lived in Los Angeles. And she was like, let's move out to Los Angeles and live together. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. That'll be fun. I was still in my 20s and thought this will be a great venture. Moved out to Los Angeles and with my sales job, and realized that my southern ways were not as endearing to the people of the state of California, or really the Los Angeles proper. They didn't think it was too cute or fun, and the relationships were a lot harder to come about. So my job, I was like, I can't stand my job. Like, I can't, nobody will talk to me. They were like, no, move along. And so I ended up going, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my sister-in-law is an actress, and she said, have you ever thought about, you always love fashion, have you ever thought about just like coming on one of the sets and just checking it out and see if there's any part of it that you like to do, maybe be a costume PA? And I was like, no, I'd never thought about it because I was just going to be a sales rep. This is the way God had put my path, in place. And anyway, she was coming to Atlanta to do it was ABC Family. It was a TV movie. And she was like, you're going to be a PA. And I was like, yeah, I'll be a PA. That'll be great. Well, I got to Atlanta and I loved it so much. Even being a PA was so much fun. That was totally outside the sales realm, but it was, you were on set where it was constantly changing. You were watching, people film a scene, and it was all new to me. And I was like, I love this. Well, about the same time, Georgia got a tax incentive that took Georgia into a Hollywood-like, shows coming all the time. So work was amping up, and they didn't have enough people to actually do the job. So from that PA job, I did 2 more little PA jobs, and then I went right into the movie Zombieland, which I was, for a costumer for the first time, that's a pretty crazy movie because the costumes are pretty outrageous to even think about. And then I went right into the movie The Blind Side, which really was a fun movie to start off costuming. And if you want to look, I gave you in the little breakdown of the different jobs of the costume department. It gives you like the costume designer, the costume supervisors, key costumer. It gives you a little bit of a background on those things. So when I'm talking to you about how I got into this, it's really showcasing you a little bit of, okay, she was a costume assistant, costume PA, then she went into the set costuming, and that's kind of, so I went on into the movie The Blind Side, which was so much fun, and I was like, I'm going to do this now forever. Well, film jobs, I don't know if y'all are aware, but 70-hour work weeks. And as a costumer, you are there with the first costume PA because you are setting rooms. Talent has to have their clothes. That's first. They a lot of times get dressed before they even go to hair and makeup. So, if set call was 6 a.m., I would have a 4:12 call, like 4 a.m. call. And then you're also the last to leave because you have to get all the clothes off the people. So 70-hour work weeks all the time, and I was treating it like I could never take a break. I just went from project to project to project to project. I loved it, but my dad sat me down. He's like, you are doing tax season hours. He's a CPA. You are doing tax season hours all year round. He goes, we do it 4 months a year. You're going to burn out. And I was like, no, I got this. I can do this. I'm young. Not really. And I don't need sleep. Who needs sleep? So anyway, 5 years straight of going from project to project to project. And I never did the designing part yet. I was always either a key costumer, which means I was in control of making sure clothes were prepped and ready to go, or I was on set with the talent, making sure that they're, if they were wearing a jacket in the scene, that jacket was there, or if they're taking it off, making notes of their continuity, that sort of thing. So anyway, 70 hours, 5 years. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need a break. And I decided to move down to Florida. I had a friend that had a clothing line. It was called Judith March. It's still in business. Great little, it's for younger girls. I say teenage girls. And she was like, why don't you come do marketing and co-design with me and live at the beach? So I was like, oh, okay, let me do that. And it was really kind of this fun way of marrying the two worlds, because I had made so many connections in the film world that I was like, now I'm working for this clothing designer. Why don't we send them clothes and put them on these actors and like co-promote and get our shows, like get her clothes on TV shows. So I kind of worked that angle for a while. Wasn't married, by the way. So I'm giving y'all a little overview. And met my husband in the meantime, military guy. And he had 4 children. So that was going to change my life completely. And he was active duty military and living in Texas. So I was like, how am I going to do any of this work and be a bonus mom to 4 kids and live in Texas? So it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to choose my husband and I'm going to see where God takes me from here. So anyway, moved to Texas. As the kids got older, things settled down with our life, and I got back into film. But the craziest story for me getting back into this filming world and the costume design was I was called to come do a movie for a Christmas movie, which I love Christmas movies. I love happy movies, in Lake Tahoe. Not a bad gig. And they were like, you're going to come and assist our designer. And I was like, great, this is going to be so much fun. It's a smaller film. It'll be in a beautiful place. I'm going to love it. And I get there, and the designer, who usually the designer's job, the primary is to have all the costumes, the fittings, everything ready for camera, and then they give it to all the other people to have it ready for camera. Well, I got there and she goes, I've got to leave. Wow. And I said, you got to leave now? Like, we haven't even started shooting. You haven't done fittings. You've done nothing. And she goes, I have a book. Here it is. I want you to take over. And I'm not kidding. What she had written on the piece of paper was, lead actress, cute top, jeans. And y'all, this is a decent movie, like, a couple $1 million movie. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I have a whole cast of people, and she literally just left. And they were like, it's up to you now. And I'm like, up to me? Where are the clothes? It says cute top and jeans. Like, where am I going to get this? And she hadn't even done a fitting with our lead actress. And it was I pulled it off. I don't know. It was the Lord, because the only way you can get through something like that is that God steps in and gives you like his peace to go, okay, we're going to make this work. And it was a God thing, but it also, that stepped me into the role as a costume designer without even being able to say that was what I wanted to do. It was like, okay, here it is. You got this opportunity to take it. So from there, I booked back to back to back Christmas movies. I mean, I was kind of like the Christmas queen of, and I loved it because if you ever have Christmas in April and May and June, and you're just like Christmas lights, and then you start to get, you know, the fun Christmas sweaters and the sweetness of it and the season of it. So I went from, and it was all with the Lifetime Network, but it was sweet films, that nothing that was pushing the envelope with, you know, that made me feel like morally that I couldn't do them. And it was just like, I loved it. I just kept like, okay, I'll take every Christmas movie I'll bring to my table. And then, so that gets me to a really weird spot where I've been praying, like, you know, I'd seen I Can Only Imagine, I'd seen I Still Believe, and I had looked up the costume designer for those specific movies, and I was like, this girl must be magical. Like, I can't wait to ever one day get to work with her. Like, I just kept looking at seeing this name, Anna Redmond. And I was like, one day I'm going to get to work with her. Well, and this is, y'all, this is literally how this worked out. I got a call for a Christmas movie in Nashville. And it was, let's see, I had just finished a movie in New Mexico, and I was supposed to go on to it. Well, the producer of the movie had set these parameters that were going to make my job really, really difficult. Like, usually on smaller budgets, this is just a good thing to know, your budget dictates if you get a costume trailer, or if you work out of a room somewhere, or if you're going to work out of a car. So this was more of you're working out of you have a room, and you're going to break down a rack each day and go to set. And a little bit more of a rogue costuming situation. And, but this was a Reba McEntire movie. And I was like, that's not I'm going to load up a car. This is kind of a bigger step than that. She's like, oh, we can't afford any of that stuff. You can't do it. And so I turned the job down. And it really hurt me because I was like, I wanted to do this, but I was like, they've put me in a situation where I know enough now that if I say yes to this without it being set up properly, then I'm going to fail, and I don't want to fail. So back to my magical Anna Redmond. She is a costume designer out in Nashville. And she ended up getting the call and taking the job. But of course, they gave her the parameters that I had asked for that I did not get. They, you know, said a yes to the costume trailer, yes to this, yes to, you know. So anyway, Anna finds out about me. And I am on an anniversary trip with my husband in Mexico, and I get a call from Anna Redmond. Like, y'all, this is so true. Like, I'd already knew I wanted this person, like, to mentor me in some fashion because she'd done all the movies that I just had a lot of respect for, and thought, how do you get into those faith-based movies that, you know, you can pour your love for Jesus, but also work in a world that doesn't sometimes bring him into it. And so she calls me and she goes, do you have a minute? And I'm thinking, my husband goes, who is that? And I'm like, it's Anna Redmond. Like, she wants to talk to me. He's like, we're on a beach in Cabo. And I was like, I'll be right back. 2.5 hours later, I come back out to the beach. Y'all, if that moment was life-changing for me. She did not know anything about me being attached to the project. She felt like she had stolen the movie from me. And she called to make sure that there was no anything weird. Like, she was like, I just want you to know, I didn't know that you were attached to this project. I didn't take your job. And I had to explain to her it was not, I had already turned the job down, but I wanted her to know, like, my heart, well, our conversation led to, okay, here we are. What do we do? And she's like, I'm going to provide you with some jobs. And I was like, what? She goes, I can't do every faith-based film. She's like, I keep feeling the Lord tell me I'm building up an army of women to be part of the kingdom and being in the costume world that we can rely on each other and help each other grow. And I was like, is this like really happening right now? Like, is this, I was heartbroken about not having the job. And then now here I am talking to the woman that I have looked up on IMDb a million times to go, how can I get to meet this person? And here she is calling me and saying, God's just told me, hey, this is going to happen. And within 2 months, she's calling me again. And she's like, hey, do you know Sherry Rigby? And I'm like, I know the name. And she's like, do you know the Women in My World ministry? And I'm like, no, but I need to know all of this, I guess. She's like, Sherry's getting ready to do a movie. I'd like you to do this movie with Sherry. And I was like, okay, where is it? When? You know, all of these things. And we got on calls and we started creatively like going through how this would work. Anna was going to mentor me. And if y'all don't know Sherry, it's like the taste of sunshine, just being around her. She elevates you and makes you really want to collaborate and get into her creative, because she's producer, director, actress, she's everything. And I look at the way God molded all those situations between Anna, and then Anna introducing me to Sherry, and then Sherry taking me under her ministry and allowing me to work on one movie, which was called Identity Crisis, which is really a really beautiful movie right now about knowing our identity and who we are in Christ first and foremost. Especially young girls, we can get wrapped up in the wrong things. I mean, anybody can get wrapped up in the wrong things, but this is for your teenage college girls that think that things are broken within them that they need to fix, and realizing that you were created by an awesome God that made you perfect. And he put every, hair on your head. He made your nose the way it is. He made you the way you are, and he's the one that should be given all the glory without trying to fix everything. So great little movie for if anybody's struggling in that regard. And then Sherry brought me on to Divine Influencer, which I'll show you some of those boards in a minute of how we came up with the creative design for that. So I've gotten to work with Sherry twice, and all of that was because of a phone call with Anna Redmond back on a vacation that changed the trajectory of what I've been working on for the last several years. So that gives you a little bit of how I've morphed into this costume design world. It really kind of happened out of an uncomfortable situation that turned into just being God's path for me. Another thing that happened within my little circle was Anna. I can remember I was sitting on the couch one night and she goes, hey, I got another movie for you. And I was like, okay. She's like, King & Country is making this movie and they need an assistant designer. Would you be willing to work under Terry Middleton as her ACD or costume supervisor? I'm like, sign me up. I'm like, send me the script and get me going. And that's the way I feel like the whole difference in costume designing and faith and family films versus I did a lot of secular films when I was in Atlanta. Everybody really cares about each other. Everybody wants to see each other grow. And they're building you up, like helping you to see that here's the next step, here's the next step, here's the next step. So the movie that's coming out that y'all will see Wednesday night, Unsung Hero, I got to work on and be the assistant designer and have such a wonderful time in Kentucky and see God move in so many different ways that you just kind of, I'm going to pinch myself. This is kind of awesome. It is awesome. And then another God moment, and I'll finish about me and talk a little more about department, but I have to express just how he has walked with me, especially as my faith has grown, showing me like, okay, if this project doesn't call your name, don't force it. Yeah. Just move on. Go find the next one that he's going to put He has you destined for that. So I get a call again, Anna Redmond. I keep saying her name, Anna Redmond. But because she really is. She will pour goodness and grace all into you just like God pours into her. Both her and Sherry are like this. And she calls me this summer, it's a Tuesday, and she says, Sally, I'm on the movie The Forge. I need you. And I was like, for what? And she was like, I need an assistant designer. Something's come up she has a team and that she works with. And she's like, something's come up. I need you to be here Friday. I'm like, I'm designing a movie in Austin at the time that ended on Thursday. And I'm like, I don't know about this. This is like, I have been racking my brains for 10 days. It's just trying to get through this week. And now you're telling me I got to be on a plane ready to be gone all summer in Georgia. And if you know, Anna, you can't say no to her. I've been praying about when I can actually work hand in hand with her so I can pick up on all her little tricks of the trade because she's been doing Faith and Family for so long. And I was like, okay, I'll be there Friday. And I called my husband and I'm like, it's time. I'm leaving and I'll be gone all summer, I think. So I got on a plane, got here, and spent the whole summer in Albany working on The Forge. And again, another blessing upon blessing of people that just pour into you in a way that from starting out in one area of life thinking I'm just going to sell things for a living, be a sales rep. And there's nothing wrong with being a sales rep. It just was not my calling. And I got into this in weird ways, but every time it's been a weird way, something so beautiful has come out of it. So that leads me up to this summer and then, had again, I tell everybody these films, they're life-changing. You grow so much. Like just working here on The Forge was, again, hey, you had people praying over you constantly. You had people loving on you. You had people pulling you aside if things where you were having, because we're all human. Even in this Christian film, you're going to have moments when you're short with people. You're going to have moments when things don't go your way. We had the beautiful Kindred Brothers decided to give us the week of the 4th of July off in the middle of filming, which never happens anyway, but they thought it was so important for us to have that break. And I personally loved it because my family lives so close that I got to go spend time with them. But it disrupts your filming. Like I tell everybody, I got to get in film shape because you got to get yourself ready for only sleeping 5 and 6 hours a night and going. And we took off during that week, and the next week was for costumes, one of the hardest weeks because we had all the Forge men starting work that Monday after being off. Well, for us in fitting schedule, you don't get actors to come in but maybe a day or two before. So if the talent's coming in a day or two before, you get them in and then you got to alter their clothes and make sure they're ready to go. Well, we didn't have that. So we were bringing in talent on Sunday night and they were shooting Monday morning and there were 14 of them. We were kind of like, okay, this just can't work. And again, it's just like Stephen was talking out there, things that happened that were only God can make move. That a local men's store here, because this was menswear, opened up their store to us. Opened up at 5 a.m. in the morning and let us bring all those men into that store and get suits to fit every single man. Wow. And we didn't hold camera, got everybody dressed. We had one guy that was going to bring all of his own clothes and his luggage got lost on the plane on Sunday night. So we had to add him into the mix to get him dressed. And I just look at how God made it work. He just made it work. And when Stephen said he looks at all these people and sees different things, that's the same thing for us. And even in our little world of costumes, we're like, how are we going to pull off something that doesn't even seem possible? And you're like, God, we don't do it. God does. He just allows us the resources to get it done. And he showed out because we made that week, which again was one of the hardest, heaviest weeks for our department. He made it go seamless. Like it was at the end of that, we were like, we did it. You know, we had hiccups, but we did it. So, you know, the overall picture of the costume department is, like I said in there, it's costume designer. She's your creative, you know, she's responsible for creating all the looks that each character will wear, whether that's shopping, whether that's actually having a tailor make those costumes, depending again on the budget. If you're making costumes, you got to have a pretty big budget. Or if the actors bring in their own clothes, because I've been in that boat a lot. Right, Micah? Please bring your own jeans. They fit you nicely. And your own black boots. And then you have the assistant costume designer that kind of, yes, you assist the designer, but like for me, during the Forge, Anna was like, here, I'm going to give you these characters and you shop them and dress them and then send me pictures for approval. So it's very hand-in-hand working. You learn a lot. I love being an assistant designer because usually it's working with somebody that has experience that you're like, I want to learn. I want to be a student. I want to, you know, continue to be growing. And then on the flip side of that, you have the costume supervisor. I will tell y'all, in all honesty, do not call Sally Cruz to be a costume supervisor. It is budgeting. It is the organization. I am way too creative and like need to be more active with it. Whereas a supervisor, yes, they do it, but it's a lot of mental. And I think it's the hardest job in the department, to be honest. But it's because it's not natural for me to want to sit down and look at numbers and do receipts. Then you have your key costumer, and that person is either on the truck that we have. You know, we have a big wardrobe truck usually, and I say always, but we don't. If you have a big enough movie, you get a costume truck, and that's where we have all the work that we store in there. Well, that person is in charge of managing the truck, meaning they know where everything is on the truck. They keep it organized. They keep everything clean. Everything comes in and off the truck. That's their, and they're kind of the head of what's going on between the set costumers on set. So set costumers, if you like being on set and you love that like social part of it, because it's a social job once you get there. I mean, you're there to work, but it's got a lot more interaction with other departments and stuff. You are there every time talent's there, and you make sure you have all the pieces that are required for each scene. So that can be a fun job. I loved being set costumer when I was younger. And now I say that being that I don't mind set, but it can, you know, you're there a lot. If they're rolling camera, you're on set. And then it comes down to your, you know, costume assistant. And I encourage anybody that really wants to know anything about the costume department, start there and see, because yeah, you might be going to get everybody coffee one day, but you might also be shadowing somebody on set and holding things so that the set costumer has an extra set of hands. Or you might be learning on the truck how to keep things organized so that the designer or the assistant designer can come in and find what they need to, you know, maybe they want to add earrings or they want to add something. So we keep all that stuff on the truck as well. So, and then like bigger budget shows, you'll have, what's funny, we call them a tailor, someone that can build. On the Forge, we had a very, very great, I know, yes, they are so talented to watch them because they're so quick. when they build, like you're like, okay, you're going to build this shirt. And they just get a pattern and they do it and they cut it and they make it. And you're like, wow, you are truly talented. And I also encourage people that love to sew like that, keep doing it, because most of those people are a lot older now. Like my grandmother's age did a lot of sewing, and she tried to teach me a few things, and I'm okay, but I can't sit down and make a dress. And I honestly, sitting here now, I really wish that was something I could do a little bit better job of, because it would help me. And, you know, so maybe I'll take sewing lessons now that I'm talking this out to y'all. But then you can have an ager dyer. And now that sounds like a crazy job too. But like when you want clothes to look old or tattered and torn, or, you know, you can beat fabrics down to make them look worn. Because some movies you really will notice, you're like, everything looks brand new. And their shoes have no scuff marks on them. And that's not really, you know, you'll start looking for it. You'll see it. You're like, there's creases in that shirt from where it looks like they didn't. When that's bad costuming. So don't, yeah. Sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes you're just like, throw it on set and go. So those are all areas that you can work into. I was looking, when I was preparing for this, I was looking to go, I did a lot of 3-people department. Me as the costume designer, a set costumer, and a PA. And it's tough because you're really, that means I'm doing the costume designer job, the assistant job, and the supervisor job, which I already know is for me. But if it's a smaller, you know, cast, it's not as grueling. You know, it makes you're like, okay, I only have 3 actors today and they only change clothes twice. That's much more manageable. Well, if you have a big budget, you know, look at a $20 million film, then your costume department's going to reflect like that. You might have 20 people in your department. So the roles that I showed you on that piece of paper become very specific. Like if you're a set costumer, you're just on set. You're not even worried about anything else going on. Whereas if you're on the small film, you have to worry about everything because you're making sure nothing fell through the cracks. But it's all about the budget in the end. It's just, hey, we have money for this many positions within your department. What are the most important roles? And I would say that if you're doing a period piece, then you got to have somebody, for sure you got to have a tailor on set. And you got to have the right, even for your background people, you're going to have people dressed in a certain way. You can't just go, hey, show up with this, show up with that, because who's going to come out and say, oh, let me bring my corset from this time and put that on for this scene, you know? So a lot of interesting things can happen based on what kind of movie it is. Like I told y'all earlier, I love Christmas movies. They make me happy. I think it's the lights. It just has to be the lights, because it's like every scene, you know, you watch it and you go, oh, it looks dreamy, it's warm. And so those aren't, if they're current day, you're set, because people can bring, hey, do you have a red or green sweater? But again, like you said, if you're doing a Western, unless you're in Texas or you're just a cowboy at heart, then you might need somebody there to address those people and actually source those clothes. So, okay. Have I gotten off any? I'm looking to see if I've given y'all all that I had kind of set up. I talked about my Anna Redmond. I talked about Sherry. You know, I came for the first time last year. It's because during Unsung Hero, they had talked about this film festival. Never knew about this film festival, which is really crazy because one of my first sales jobs was here in Albany, Georgia. And I lived here for a year and a half. But it was before this started. But I remember coming last year with my friend Micah, who was like, come on, come on, come on. And which Micah has done the hair and for all the movies too. So we kind of, hair, makeup, wardrobe are real connected. We have this thing where we kind of like You know, Sherry always tells us we're the first people to put our hands on the talent, and how she wants to make sure that we are praying over them, that our hearts are set in the right place when we go in, that we're not filled with negativity or with anything that's going to set our talent into a tailspin, because they got to get on camera and perform, you know. So I loved that she said that, but it was also encouraged by Micah to come here and hear this. And of course, Terry had told me too while we were doing Unsung, you need to come to the Christian Worldview Film Festival. And I remember last year, Stephen Kendrick talked about, and it has stayed with me, and I talk about it all the time because he was so passionate about it. But it was also when we are signing on to a project, we get deal memos, and it's how they're going to pay us. You know, if we're going to get a car, we're going to get hotel, whatever it is to come work on whatever film it is, you get a deal memo. And I remember him saying, when you sign your name for that deal memo, you are saying, I agree with what I'm about to put my time and effort into. And it left me feeling, because I've done movies that I wish I could change the name on. Like, I know, I mean, again, the Lord, full of mercy and grace, but there's things that I've attached myself to before that I'm like, why did I do that? And it was because I was worried about insurance and money and being alone and all of those things. And it, again, coming in and hearing him talk about that, I was like, you need to make sure that you read every line of a script before you sign on to it. Because if it doesn't sit well with who you believe to be ordaining your life, and I mean that wholeheartedly, then you need to, it's not the project God wants you in. And when you don't go, we try to be going against what God has planned. It doesn't usually work out. It might temporarily have some kind of worldly benefit, but then you pull back and you go, ugh, why did I do that? So it's changed the way I view everything. And I have not had a design job since we left the Forge, mainly because the last part of the year everybody was on strike and everything shut down. But it's also, I look at God showing me, like he gave me that time that I've gotten involved at my church more. I got to go to a marriage group with my husband, and it's called Re-Engage, and just really peel the layers of marriage off and how important it is to grow individually, but also as you grow individually, you grow as a couple. And I'm like, that's just God working and saying, hey, I need you to focus on this, and when the next project comes, he'll provide, and that's a great feeling of knowing that he has us covered, like he's with us at all the time. Last thing, I've been talking forever because I want y'all to have time to ask some questions, but I want to show y'all some boards, how I kind of go through with. These were boards that I sent to Sherry, my director, and we worked on together to go, okay, this is the looks we want for these characters. And I just used Keynote. This is just an overall, this was some of the looks we chose for. Have any of y'all seen Divine Influencer? Okay. If you haven't, it's really so cute. And our beautiful Micah, who plays Tara in the back. This was such a fun movie. When I read the script, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun to shop for. And we had a really, it was a hard movie because we only had so many days and we had a lot going on. And if I remember, I think she had 30 changes. It was some days I was like, you have 7 changes, like back to back to back. And within one day, you think about it, and if it takes 15 minutes to change and you do the math, you're like, okay, for 2.5 hours, I'm going to be changing this girl in and out of clothes. And poor Micah was like in there with her hair. And you're like, we need to keep her hair similar because we can't be popping her in and out of this. It's kind of a crazy thing. But I want to show y'all, this is Divine Influencer. We did it last year. And if you haven't seen it, it's on PureFlix. These were boards that Sherry and I would send, colors. We really loved the texture of big coats, which she ended up wearing Micah's coat. Micah walked in with this beautiful, like, it looks, the texture of that curly, but it was the blue. And we decided on the original title was Golden Influencer. So we loved the color of gold. Her name was Olivia Golden. So it was like, we wanted to pop that in a couple of places. Oh, look at me. Do y'all ever do that with like a picture? You're like, and then you're like, this is a real picture. I can't do that. Colorways to kind of showcase what, we wanted to do for her. Again, just more inspiration of her glam look, because she starts out really high end. And one of the things that we did for this film is we rented some of the clothes because I needed high-end stuff, and you can do Rent the Runway for a month or two and get high-end stuff that you don't have to pay $500, but you get the look. This was more of when they go to the boutique, how everybody would kind of be high fashion. Then we have our Ryan character. Ryan's character was more, he was running the shelter, so more jeans and plaids, and this also gave some color and feel to the character. Let's see. This is you. This is Tara. We had this Southwest vibe. And when I look back at this, I'm like, yeah, we did that. We had some of this like really going on. She wore her big belt buckle with her cross on it, and the tones kind of looked more Southwest. Then the chef, Zara. It was really important for us to have the colored, because she was always going to wear a chef. So that's like, okay, well, she's going to wear a chef uniform. That's not as, but she always had that pop of color in her hair to give her some dimension as a character. Then the women of the mission, the day we shot this, I was worried, when you're telling people to come dressed for a movie, nobody wants to come looking like they're not their best self, right? You're like, well, they're living in a homeless shelter. So it's a nice way of saying you can't wear your diamonds and your pearls, right, and fit into the role of it. So what I like to do is send these boards to my people so that they, are prepared, like, hey, maybe look at this and get some ideas, and then, come. Then again, the male trying to come up with things that looked a little bit more, downtrodden. And the best thing to do, you can write out directions to people all day, but they're not really going to read it, honestly, especially if you get too wordy. Send them pictures. Always send pictures. This was her best friend, Delta's best friend, KK, and we really, I go back and look at these boards because these are pre-movie, and I'm like, we really did stick to a lot of this, she wore a lot of dresses and things that this kind of really fit her vibe. Lillian, that was the mother that was in it quick, but she was very sophisticated and a little older. Flora ended up being a little bit older than what I had originally, in my head, had her. When you read a script, you come up with things in your head that, even if that's not, once you meet the director, but you have your own ideas, so you just kind of go, okay, well, Flora ended up being just a little bit older, and I can't tell y'all enough how much I love that. She's the lady that played her, Rebecca Kuhn. Y'all, salt of the earth, came in so happy to be there and so joyful. And it just makes our job, when you come in to put on clothes, you're like, oh, I love this. I want to be around that, people be around. I know, I'm going so long. Charles, we recast Charles. We fit one guy, ended up having to go home. So we got a new guy the next morning, totally different sizes, totally different. So I was like, whatever he is, he's going to have to wear a beanie and he's going to have to wear layered clothes. And then these, like I said, these are just clothes that I put out for looks of how things would go. I think we had, I don't remember. Oh, it was the big party, what people could wear to the big party. This was that. So these are the boards. Then anytime I do background, and this is just real quick, anytime I do background, I send pictures as well of ideas that you can follow along. It's just makes it so much easier. There's no miscommunication. I mean, people will definitely look at pictures before they look at anything else. So, anybody have questions? I have talked so long. I cannot believe. I was so worried about having enough to say. And then my husband goes, you always have a lot to say. Yes, I do. But does anybody have anything that, after all I gave y'all? No? Yeah.
So on your actors, or actresses, do you ever do like color theory on them, or do you just do it based on like the scene?
So it's a great question. Because I always talk to my actors, that's one of the first things I call and ask about anything that is a no to them. Because this is the thing, they need to be comfortable. Now, if it's getting into a scene, I even put an example of how important it is for us to work with the production designer on what the walls are going to be yellow, and you wanted them in this canary shirt, and then yellow is not their color. So you really have to figure out ways of working around that. But I think one of the things that I really think is important is when you have that initial conversation with the actor, is finding out, hey, like, if I put this color on, I look jaundiced, or I look sickly, or I look, this is not going to work. So for sure, I don't do a color test by anything, but I let them say, hey, I don't look good and this does not fit my body well, and get on that. And then I actually talk to our director if it's something like, hey, they're really not going to want to wear this. Does that make sense? Like, this isn't going to work. So does that answer your question?
I mean, I just know, like, in different movies and shows, like, maybe, like, a particular person doesn't look good in, like, maybe a shade of red or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Like, let's say in that scene, they're supposed to look sick.
Yeah.
So like, they'll specifically put them in that, like, shade of red
to make them look the color. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, I was just kind of wondering.
No, and that's a good point. If it's something they're supposed to, if that's the premise of the thing, then you just have to explain. The other thing is communication with the actor, communication with the director. Hey, we've got to make sure that, hey, the actor doesn't want to wear this, but she's supposed to be sick in the scene, so she needs to wear this color, so it actually helps bring it to life. So good stuff. I feel like I always feel this way. I'm like, oh, you talked a lot. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have a heart for fashion design. I went to school for fashion design. I never thought about doing costume design. What are the skills like that it takes to kind of start with the PA assistant piece?
So as far as it's finding, honestly, finding the people, the costume designers or the producers or whoever it is, finding those people and saying, I really want to learn about this. Like it's about connecting. I know I put on the end some just tips and it's really more tips for just being a good person is what I think, or in learning to grow, but the ability to network. I was like, the name wouldn't come out, y'all. Every other name will come out, but not network. The ability to network and find that, say, hey, I'm really interested in this. I never thought about it, and God's laid it on my heart, and I'm ready to give this a shot and see if I'm, what part of it I'm interested in. So, No, y'all, I'm, it's like right at 4. So she's like, I'm good. But yeah, if y'all want to come talk after, if you have any questions for me, I know I kind of, oh, yes.
3 questions if it's not too much.
Oh yeah, you go ahead.
So I'm a fellow customer, but I mostly work in theater.
Okay. We love you. Because theater people are fast and they know, they're like, let's go. They change fast. They're good. Okay, go ahead.
So, like, I have a toolkit that I bring with me. I have my go bag.
Yeah.
When you're on set, like, in the different positions and things like that, what are the things that are, like, the primary things you're like, that's a lifesaver, I gotta keep that in my bag kind of thing? Or, like, just things that you keep with you?
Yes. Scissors.
Definitely.
Double-side sticky tape. Pre-thread needles. Pre-thread for sure, because anytime you need to sew. Lint roller. I show this all the time. Y'all, this is so dated now because it was before. We do everything on our device now, like all continuity, pictures, everything. This is when you had like to print out a page and print the picture and stick it on there, like old school. But it still has list of like so much good stuff. I'm like, I tell everybody, if you're sitting on the fence of just basics, even though it's pretty, but it breaks it down for you, and it even talks about budgeting and all that stuff. So this is great, and it has a list of everything you need in your set bag. But those, I would say, top stick and needle, pre-threads. Yes.
Thanks.
Do you have
Then the other question is just any advice for a customer who's trying to transfer from theater into film? And then the partial of that too is that I have an interview tomorrow with Sight and Sound Film for a crafts artisan, and I'm no terrified. And so, like, any advice for like the interviewing process?
Pray first. Pray first, because, and ask for, again, that's you and God, but I always say, just, God, here I am, open me up to what you're going to pour into me so that I can feel confident in my skills. You should be very confident, especially coming from a theater background. I grew up my mom had a dance studio. I did costumes all the time, but I did it, dance costumes, Lycra, everything had to move. You had to work, you had to dance through it. So it's more of a, theater, you're moving too. So it's very similar, and it's fast. Like, you're not, with movies, we can go in and reset, but if they're on stage performing, you're not gonna be like, hey, hold on, I've got to come in and fix her zipper, So my advice on the calming your nerves for it, because I get it, is the prayer will ease you out, and try to listen for things that are just positive and going to fill you up with so much goodness that you're like, I do a lot of podcasts, and Candace Cameron Bure has the best podcast right now, y'all. It's so uplifting and fun, and she has such good people on there helping to, and every time I get in a rut, I listen to it, and I'm like, yes, Lord, you are speaking. So what was before that question?
Just any advice you would have as far as transferring from
Yes.
theater into film?
Well, just relying on your skills in theater, because I've worked with so many theater people, and I'm always like, oh, can you please bring me more of them? Because you don't have that bubble that, if you've been working in this industry in big movies, a lot of times you'll hire somebody and they're like, oh, I'm your set costumer, I'm not doing that. And you're like, whoa. This is, I've had it happen plenty of times where you hired me as your set, I'm going to set. And I'm like, no, I need you here to seam out and do that because I don't have a key. And so you focus on your skills that you have and how it will come into film, because a lot of costumers don't have the same skill set, especially because they don't understand the speed of which you work. So,
No, thank you very much.
yep. Okay. Well, if anybody wants to talk after, I'm full of the words, as you know. If not, I'm not really big on socials, so I always say you can. I do have an account, Sally Alexandra, on Instagram. I just don't post that much. I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's God telling me like not to get sucked in so much. But I am available. So if you want to look at me up, that's fine because I'll answer things. I just don't post a lot. Does that make sense? Yeah. So anybody? That's it. That's it. Ta-da! Thank y'all for coming. I really appreciate like people that care about what we do, but also that you love Jesus is the most important part of this whole thing. And when we work for him, you know, it's like he said, the most important thing is being a disciple. And people know, I mean, I've been on films where when I leave, if somebody comes in and they're, you know, using horrible language and they look at me and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, that's the best compliment you can give me is that you feel, not that you're, you know, saying, oh, I feel bad in front of Sally, but it's that you recognize there's something different and you know that that's not part of what we do. So thank you guys so much. Thanks for coming.